Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And we're going to have so much fun today. We're talking about something that I'm not sure we've ever really talked about in our 870 plus programs. And so we're going to have so much fun. And it also makes me think about my career before I started my company, because it's just going to be so much fun. And so please join me in welcoming Howie Zales to our program today. Welcome, Howie. How are you?
Great, Deb. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing spectacular. Couldn't be doing any better, right? Well, let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we will jump into this. So Howie Zales is an Emmy Award winning camera operator who turned his passion for television broadcasting into several entrepreneurial endeavors. He created HJZ Productions Incorporated in 2000 to address the need for professional level sports staffing in the New York market. In 2019, Howie and his team founded Viridity Entertainment Services, Inc., VES, to offer best-in-class broadcast quality live streams of professional sports shows and concerts. VES also produces corporate meetings and events. In addition, Howie took his love of the television production business and created the TV Sports Course, a hands-on training boot camp for the next generation of television crew professionals. So again, Howie, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Deb. Thank you so much.
You know, this is going to be so much fun because I love a lot of the technical aspects of how we do things. But I always like to know from my guests how it is that you got to where you are today. So, yeah, we did say Emmy Award winning, so we probably need to know a little bit about that. But tell us more about how it is that you got to where you are today.
Yeah, well, I was in all throughout my childhood in high school, I played sports, specifically had a love for baseball.
Mm-hmm.
Being in New York, I always went to Yankees, Mets games, Rangers, Knicks. I would always watch the camera people and think it was interesting. And in my family, we had I had a second cousin that was older, but he was photographer for the New York Times and shot pictures with Babe Ruth and Albert Einstein. So it was kind of a little bit in the blood. And in high school, I needed an elective. I need one class, and the choices were, this TV production course, and the description was a trip to NBC studios and 30 Rock, and a tour,
Cool.
and then to watch a TV show being taped. And I'm like, well, how bad can that be, right? As a high school, and I ended up falling in love with TV production. And I figured what better thing to combine my love of sports, my new passion of TV production, and to apply to colleges that had TV production programs.
I love it. Okay. Emmy winning. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that was for our coverage in Beijing with NBC Sports
The Olympics.
For the U.S. women's Olympic gymnastics.
Oh, wow. How spectacular was that? I mean, just to watch it, but from our perspective, was spectacular. It must have been absolutely fabulous. Now it is very different when you are working, you're not spectating. But it had to be fabulous just to be there.
Yeah, to say that I was right there with the US women when they when it got determined that they were going to win the all-around gold medal. It was, super exciting.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's and like I said, it is different because you're not thinking I have to watch them do this vault or whatever. You're thinking, how am I going to get the best camera angle? I mean, all of those things. So I have to ask, you obviously knew how well they were doing simply because, but when did you realize that they were going to win? I mean, were was it crowd noise? Was it?
Well, we have headsets. We
Mhm,
were listening to a director and a producer,
mhm,
so we know the story we're trying to
mhm,
tell, right? So we know the score,
mhm,
obviously,
mhm.
and this isn't any sporting event, right?
Right.
So we're trying,
Mhm,
we're always listening to the announcers are telling the story
mhm,
orally
mhm,
through what they're saying, and
mhm,
we're backing up what they're saying with
mhm.
our pictures. So we're
Right.
trying to get the best pictures
Mhm,
to support the story that the announcers are
mhm.
trying to tell.
Right. And it is a challenge because you are telling that story, and you have to think, what visual images are going to tell those best stories. And sometimes it's the heartbreaking ones, right? It's
Hmm.
the, we've lost the World Series. I did any sports person, when they know that they're not going to win, is, whatever level, is usually just crushing. But also to see the wonder of, when they know they have done really well.
Right. Or, like if there's, in preseason
Mm-hmm.
football, right? If there's two quarterbacks that are
Mm-hmm.
vying for the same
Right.
job and one quarterback's in, you're
Mm-hmm.
always shooting the other quarterback
Right. Mm-hmm.
for their reactions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the
Mm-hmm.
story, who's
Mm-hmm.
gonna get the job.
Mm-hmm.
So and we could always, as camera people, you can hear what the announcers are
Mm-hmm.
saying,
Right.
so you're backing up what the announcers are
Mm-hmm.
saying with the pictures, and you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to get the most
Mm-hmm.
artistic picture you can get.
Mm-hmm.
A director that I worked with for years, John Gonzalez from NBC, said, always think about making a movie. Can you
Mm-hmm.
step right or left
Mm-hmm.
to make the shot that
Right.
much more
Mm-hmm.
interesting? So you have foreground, background. Can
Mm-hmm.
you go down to one knee
Mm-hmm.
so you're looking up at the person you're shooting to make
Mm-hmm.
it more of a quote godlike shot?
Mm-hmm.
How can you make your pictures look more interesting?
Right. And for me, I'm a sports nut. One of the most descriptive video things that, and they don't do it anymore, and it's just, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. Right. For a certain generation, we all see that guy going boogada 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 down the ski slope, right? But that was clearly a cameraman being in the right place at the right time.
Hmm.
Which is, what often happens is, you're just like, oh my gosh, I had my camera pointed at the right place at the right time. It's not
Right.
like you could go back and tell that guy, crash again, please.
Right.
So, you've started three companies, as I mentioned in the bio. What made you decide to become an entrepreneur?
Well, I never really thought of myself as an entrepreneur when I started my first
Mm-hmm.
business, but I knew I needed a backup, right?
Okay.
What if I got hurt?
Mm-hmm.
As a camera operator,
Mm-hmm.
you're a freelancer,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a full-time job.
Right.
What if something happened or I
Mm-hmm.
stopped getting calls, right?
Mm-hmm.
The fear was always there.
Mm-hmm.
So I needed a backup, and I just didn't know what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And a friend called and said, hey, at that time, he worked for MSNBC,
Mm-hmm.
and I Miss in the Morning, the radio show I Miss, was
Mm-hmm.
done at MSNBC.
Mm-hmm.
And once in a while, they would take the show on the road.
Mm-hmm.
So my friend Brian called and said, hey, can you do camera for us? We're taking Imus on the
Mm-hmm.
road. And I said, sure. And he said, do you have any friends? We need two more camera people, an audio
Mm-hmm.
person, this and that.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, sure, I could find people for that. And then he said, do you mind just, sending me one invoice and paying everyone? It would make my
Mm-hmm.
life a lot easier. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, sure, why not? And then I
Sure.
got to thinking, well, people call me
Mm-hmm.
to get on jobs,
Right.
and they probably do this.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be a business idea
Mm-hmm.
behind that.
Right.
And so I started my company, and I reached out to the network of people,
Mm-hmm.
and one hiring job became
Mm-hmm.
another hiring job. And then in 2007, when I signed a union contract when the unions really became known in the
Hmm.
TV area,
Hmm.
and that just kind of led to the beginning of
Hmm.
our rise.
Right. Yeah, because like with actors, the same thing with the union applies. I'm assuming with you, there are certain productions that have to hire a certain number of union workers. So like Screen Actors Guild, they have to hire a certain number of union actors. Even on small productions, I remember in when I lived in Colorado, I had a very good friend who was a SAG member, and
Mhm.
he was frequently hired by the local theater productions because they all had to hire at least one or two, and sometimes he didn't do too much in the play. Sometimes he had major roles, but it was required as part of their contracts with their other unions that they did that.
Yeah, we have union contracts
Mm-hmm.
in many cities across the
Mm-hmm.
country, and we have to hire union
Mm-hmm.
people. The only way I can hire someone that's not in the union
Mm-hmm.
is if I've called everyone that's on
Okay.
the union list and
Mm-hmm.
no one is available.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only time I can hire a non-union
Right.
member.
Right. And people love unions, people hate unions, but they have a very definite purpose.
Well,
Um,
in our field, right? Because
mhm.
everyone is an independent
Mhm.
contractor, they only work when they get paid.
Mhm.
Being a union member means that you get health and welfare,
Right.
pension, and
Mhm. Oh
annuity,
yeah, the
which,
insurance benefits are worth
yeah,
it. Mhm.
yeah. So it's not that, that's why unions are
Mhm.
so helpful
Right.
in our industry,
Mhm.
is because it helps provide health
Mhm.
benefits at a more affordable
Mhm.
cost than if you were trying to go out and buy it
Right.
privately.
Right. Yeah, the friend that I mentioned, he worked in corporate America because he needed the benefits. And then when he
Right.
decided to, become full-time actor, he said, I have to be a SAG member. He said because I have to have the insurance. And it
Right.
did limit on occasion because there were certain productions that would say, okay, we're required to hire two, so we're only going to hire two. Which I always thought that was their detriment. But yeah, he definitely did it for the benefits. And it was, as you said, it also makes you you're not a standalone entity, which a lot of small business owners are. We're just kind of all out there on our own, and sort of be able to have those benefits. And in business, we do it through, like we buy insurance through chambers, things like that. I mean, there's
Mm.
certainly, that's just how we need to do things in order to function.
Well, and especially in 2023,
Hmm.
um, there's a lot of, obviously employee rights
Hmm.
and paying
Right.
workers as
Hmm.
employees. So, everyone is covered in the right way
Hmm.
and obeying all the proper
Hmm.
laws. There's really not very many, if you follow the IRS guidelines,
Hmm.
there's really not very many,
Right.
true
Hmm.
independent contractors
Hmm.
out there that can get paid as on a 1099.
Right. Right. So speaking of independent contractors, I mentioned, way back, when we were in our pre-chat, I mentioned that way back, I worked for the American Cancer Society, and even then, the stations in Denver just had limited resources. I think each one of the big major networks had maybe two or three true camera trucks with employees who worked for the station, and they relied heavily on independent contractors. And I think it's even more so now, where stations, and like you said, a lot of sports teams. I think many people don't realize that many of those camera people that are being utilized in a broadcast are not employees of the studio.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's why your broadcast sports course is great, because it's training people to fill a need.
Yeah, and during COVID, well, at least in New York, right,
Hmm.
the age of the freelancers has really kind of risen.
Hmm.
There's a lot of older people out there that were starting to retire. Then
Hmm.
COVID came in and
Hmm.
really had people take another look at things
Hmm.
and said, you know what, I'm done.
Hmm.
And so there's like, in our business, we struggle to find
Hmm.
people every week to do certain
Hmm.
positions because there aren't that many people out there
Hmm.
anymore. a lot of people were retired.
Right. And technology has obviously made a huge difference. Like I said, way back when, when we would have a television station come with their cameras, they were these big cameras. They were frequently tethered with cables to the truck. And so you really were incredibly limited as to what you could do. And even if they were a portable camera, they were still these big, gigantic things that, it just really limited what they could do. And now, it's not quite the quality, but people shoot things on their phones that are pretty close. But the technology for a professional camera that you would use, I mean, how big is your camera? It's no longer that big, gigantic thing that sits on your shoulder.
Well, if you're doing a professional live, sports entertainment show, the camera size really hasn't changed much if you're doing a handheld. Either camera, a big camera on a tripod or a handheld really hasn't changed much because the technology of what's needed inside, right? Where most cameras now are 4K, which requires a lot of technology, and the lenses are high def lenses, and if the cameras have to be a certain weight, otherwise they would be too light and you wouldn't be able to hold it steady.
You would get too much motion.
And if the lens was the lens has to have enough glass in it for it to be a high def lens. And if
those
the
are
back
heavy.
of the camera, right. And if the back of the camera was too light, then you'd be like this, not being able to hold it. So there has to be kind of like an even balance for you to be able to just stand there and hold the camera as steady as possible. And the bigger cameras that you see on, the side, not on the side, not with the people are holding, but that are on tripods, those cameras and lenses are 50 to 60 pounds a piece. And they come in like 5 or 6 different parts, like very heavy that obviously one person cannot pick up, by themselves.
Right. Yeah. And there's a reason why you don't see a lot of women who are doing this. We might want to, but that's a pretty hefty thing that you're going to have to lift.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of women in the television industry doing all different jobs, and people gravitate towards different parts or crafts of the industry. But yeah, we're definitely seeing a good number of women and always wanting more.
Right. Yeah, because clearly there are times where it is beneficial to have a woman as the photographer. Same with reporters, things like that. I have a friend who she was one of the first reporters, and she was one of the first reporters who was allowed into the locker room of professional hockey. And and of course this was quite a while ago. And she said, the gentlemen took great delight in seeing how much they could embarrass her. And and she said, and then of course there were the others who were so professional, who never ever would have even stood in front of her in a towel, let alone not a towel.
Right.
And but yeah, there are just times where it is, you might not want to be in a woman's locker room, or something like that, where it's just beneficial to have people of both sexes being able to fulfill the roles.
Absolutely.
So, you decided to start these 2 businesses. And you ever had a business background? Did you kind of, you had to start learning from the ground up.
Yeah, I learn every day. Absolutely. And when I first started the first business, I was doing everything myself. I traveled for a living, working with NBC Sports and the World Wrestling Entertainment. So I was gone a lot. I would do a lot of my HJZ or business work wherever I was, because I didn't need to be doing it from home. But when I would do payroll like 3 a.m. sometimes. I was constantly making mistakes. or clients would call and say, can we cancel? We have one too many camera people, and because I was on the road or tired, I'd forget to cancel that person. That person would show up and the client wouldn't want to pay. So, we really kind of scaled when I started hiring help. And that was like the key to our success.
Right. So you learned from that. So, walk us through that process. I mean, did you hire like a business manager first?
Yeah, I hired first I hired someone to help with the crew. We call it crewing when you hire TV crew. I hired someone to help with the crewing, and then he showed up at most of the events to kind of make sure things went well. And then eventually I hired a business manager, and she handles our accounts billable and receivable and handles all the payroll. I couldn't even tell you how to do it. And she's almost more important to the business than I am, right? A business coach taught me to, handle the 5% of what you're good at and delegate the rest. And, that's pretty much what I do.
I love it. We've actually been talking about that recently on several programs about and how, as a small business owner, delegating is one of the hardest things for us to do, particularly because we often think, well, we're the only one who is going to do it right. Right. And, even when we know it's not our strength, we're like, well, but we still have to do it.
Right. Operating an Excel spreadsheet is not my strength. Composing an an important email, I never send it out without my wife and COO of our businesses looking at it to double check it. Right. I never. So, I kind of stay in my lane and do what I'm good at.
I love it. Because it is hard. And that's where I think many businesses fail is the business owner thinks, I have to do it all, or I at least have to really have oversight for everything. And it was funny. I talked with a guest, and she was discussing the trust muscle that we have to have to really trust that our employees or contractors, whatever it is, like I have a VA, we have to trust that they're going to do it right. And we have to let them know that we trust them to do it right. That's the next step.
Right. The person that runs the business side of the business, I trust her 1,000%. We have a joke that she's my second wife. So, she knows how much we trust her. And so I couldn't do this business operate these businesses without that.
Right. Now, I'm assuming most of or all of your employees are virtual, or do you have a physical location?
Our location is out of our house, but we have one person that runs each of the two businesses, and then I kind of oversee both, and then we hire as needed our freelancers on a daily, weekly basis.
Right. And they're obviously functioning on their own.
Yes.
And so, I think, COVID obviously pushed us much more quickly into having virtual businesses. I've worked from home for over 20 years. And so it was really funny because my husband all of a sudden was home, and he had never been home. He had every day had gone to an office, you kind of like the old Dunkin' Donuts commercial. You get up, you make the donuts. He had gone into his office. And so to not be there, people were like, well, what's it like? And he wasn't wild about it. He likes it now. And he wouldn't go back to the office if, but for me, I was like, well, I've been home for 20 years. But being able to operate virtually gives so many businesses an advantage now. Because for example, if you couldn't have third-party contractors and freelancers work for you, you'd have to buy that equipment, which is not inexpensive, and have them on as full-time employees. Whereas now they have their own equipment, and you need them for 2 hours on a Saturday.
Right. Yeah, it wouldn't be cost effective to
Mhm.
own everything, or it'd be impossible.
Right.
Some of the TV trucks that show up at
Mhm.
the shoots that we do are $20 million trucks.
Right.
Obviously, that's not
Mhm.
something that we would ever even
Mhm.
dream about buying.
Right.
Um, but we hire the crew,
Mhm.
we invoice
Mhm.
and pay them, and depending on what the project is who we hire
Mhm.
and for how long.
Mhm. Right. So what are some more of the challenges and the benefits of being an entrepreneur that you have found?
Yeah, you have to, you know, business doesn't just fall in your lap.
Mhm.
You have to constantly be
Mhm.
promoting yourself, selling your business.
Mhm.
Um, and I find that um, you constantly have to be working down the road, right? You
Mhm.
can't be in too much in the business
Mhm.
in the current minute, because then 3 months down the road, you're not going to have a project, right?
Mhm.
So we're constantly working on what we have
Mhm.
now and also trying to plan for 3, 6 months down the
Right.
road.
Right. You know, and things change. I mean, that's
Hmm.
like you were saying, as we are recording this, there is currently the writer's strike. I'm
Right.
assuming that most of what you do is not affected by that because sports still go on, things like that. But if you were a company that really focused on productions for television and movies and things like that, that could be challenging. And so that's where you have to have those backup plans.
Well, so we did experience it,
Mm-hmm.
not the writer strike, but COVID. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So HJZ Productions, we had two businesses,
Mm-hmm.
HJZ Productions and
Mm-hmm.
Viridity,
Mm-hmm.
VES. VES was originally, the idea behind VES was that we were going to help support our current clients
Mm-hmm.
with the crew that they travel in for shows,
Okay.
and
Mm-hmm.
train them on sexual harassment,
Mm-hmm.
workplace harassment,
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that, and take on the burden of all that.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd be the employer of record and payroll
Mm-hmm.
those travel
Mm-hmm.
people. So the two businesses would work kind of hand
Mm-hmm.
in hand. Everything was going great,
Mm-hmm.
and then COVID happened,
Funk.
right? Like just about everybody
Mm-hmm.
else, the whole world shut down,
Mm-hmm.
but both of our businesses were affected.
Mm-hmm.
My camera operating business kind of was definitely shut down,
Mm-hmm.
and I hadn't been really shooting that much anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But both businesses, so we had to pivot. What were we going to do?
Mm-hmm.
So I I knew this. I knew about live streaming. I knew that
Mm-hmm.
it was virtual production was, maybe 5 years
Mm-hmm.
down the road, but I did a lot of research. I met, I opened up my network and I met the right person that kind of guided me,
Mm-hmm.
and I was open to new things.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a lot of research, and I set our synagogue up
Mm-hmm.
with live stream
Ah.
equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And I told the rabbi,
Mm-hmm.
who happens to be one of my closest friends,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, Brian, I said, this is what we need to buy. We need to buy
Mm-hmm.
at least two cameras, a
Mm-hmm.
computer, and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I set them up with everything needed
Mm-hmm.
to live stream their weekly services. And as we were setting up in the temple to for their first service, I
Mm-hmm.
got a call from a client that said, we need to interview 9 baseball players in 9 separate cities,
Mm-hmm.
but the interviewer cannot leave her home.
Mm-hmm.
And this is in September of 2020.
Wow.
And he
Mm-hmm.
said, can you do that? I
Mm-hmm.
said, of course.
Yeah, you never say no, right?
So then I called my wife. I said, Jenny, I just agreed to do this. I have
Mm-hmm.
no freaking idea how we're
Mm-hmm.
going to do it. We need to figure it out fast.
Mm-hmm.
So we came up, Jamie, one of my close friends now, we came up with these contributor kits, we call
Mm-hmm.
them, high-end laptops
Mm-hmm.
with high-end webcams,
Mm-hmm.
USB professional
Mm-hmm.
microphones,
Mm-hmm.
ring lights, Ethernet cables,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Everything they
uh,
need.
everything they
Mm-hmm.
need. And the best thing about it is that we own the equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So wherever, as long as it's connected to the internet,
Mm-hmm.
anywhere in the world it is,
Mm-hmm.
we can dial into that computer and take control of the camera. We can focus it. So the
Mm-hmm.
eyes are in focus, not the
Right.
background.
I know. I love the ones where we're like, okay, we really needed to see the ceiling fan
Yeah,
the entire time,
yeah.
right? Mm-hmm,
Or like it's constantly going in and out of
mm-hmm,
focus. So we can
mm-hmm,
deliver, a broadcast quality live stream.
mm-hmm,
And as we started to come out of COVID,
mm-hmm,
that company, we still do a lot of
mm-hmm,
fully virtual events, but we
mm-hmm,
do a lot of hybrid events,
mm-hmm.
corporate meetings and things like that.
Right. So it was definitely an example of there were, a situation that you were able to take advantage of.
Mhm.
And I think that happened with, a lot of businesses during COVID to really pivot and go, okay, we can do this. I work with a lot of professional speakers who all of a sudden could not travel, could not go on stage because
Right.
and there weren't those events, but they still were holding them virtually. And again, the first forays into people who were doing Zoom or whatever the technology was. I mean, those were just absolutely hilarious. I mean, I remember one woman telling me that, she thought she was doing just fine on all of her stuff until somebody commented about the unmade bed behind her. And, and she could see it, but it just never obviously entered her realm. And right, we were all doing that. Ooh, what books are they reading? What's back there? Right, all of those
Right.
various things. I had a guest fairly early on in COVID, and I've been obviously recording on Zoom the program long before COVID started, but this was a gentleman who was not used to it. He did not have a home office. He was still at his kitchen table, which a lot of people ended up. I mean, they didn't have space to be able to have a
Right.
dedicated home office. And so I'm interviewing him, and his kitchen is behind him. And it was the absolute funniest thing in the world. His teenage son came into the kitchen very quietly, made his lunch. We just kept talking. And when he was done, he waves. And it was funny. But I think part of it was that it made us know that the gentleman I was talking to was human. But at the
Right.
same point, we also kind of thought that wasn't overly professional, And
Right.
so there is kind of that fine line of, okay, it's okay if the cat might wander through, but you don't want the unmade bed back there.
Yeah, so what we do when we do our broadcasts is we always do something called a tech check.
Uh-huh.
Tech check day,
Mm-hmm.
with however many people are in the
Mm-hmm.
show. We allot an hour to 2 hours with them, and we check their internet
Mm-hmm.
speed, right? Because we need a certain internet speed to make
Right.
sure that the camera and
Mm-hmm.
audio, the camera shot and the
Mm-hmm.
audio look and sound good. We take time to go over their background
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that like you said, there's no unmade
Mm-hmm.
beds or there's no plain white walls
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. There's no, and we
Mm-hmm.
try to do it at the time of the
Mm-hmm.
day of the show because we want to know if there's any windows where the
Mm-hmm.
sun is going to be coming in
Right.
and blare,
I love it
um,
when you've got the mini
yeah,
blinds,
yeah,
right?
drives me crazy. And we want to know, like, what is the internet speed going to be
Mm-hmm.
at the time of the
Right.
event, right? Or is there someone
Mm-hmm.
home using the internet or at the
Mm-hmm.
office that's going to slow it
Right.
down,
Mm-hmm.
right? We've had to send people to hotels
Mm-hmm.
because their internet is just that bad.
Mm-hmm.
So and then we, get everyone on together for a little
Mm-hmm.
conversation. Everyone gets to know each
Mm-hmm.
other, and then we'll come back a day, two or 3 days later for the actual production.
Mm-hmm.
And we always like a space of 2 to 3 days between the tech
Mm-hmm.
check and production because, we've shipped our equipment. If
Mm-hmm.
something goes wrong,
Mm-hmm.
it gives us enough time to overnight a
Right.
new equipment
Mm-hmm.
or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm. Right. And you mentioned backgrounds, and you and I were laughing about this before the program started. We have the same background.
Yes.
And we were several months into COVID when I interviewed a woman whose job was a wardrobe consultant. Well, clearly she was not going to people's homes and working with them and so she turned into a Zoom consultant. And so we talked about what to do in your background. And I had, the plain wall back there. Now it was cream colored. So that was better than the white wall. And what happens with a white wall for those who are unfamiliar with this, it's really reflective.
Right.
And so you don't want something like that. So cream was okay. But I thought, ugh, boring. But she talked to me about, having there's a picture behind me. I don't have all the books. I do have a plant. I mean, she was very much into that. But what you and I have both used is stick-on wallpaper that we got from Home Depot and from Lowe's. And and I remember when I tried it, I thought, okay, so this is $49. If I don't like it, it's easy enough to fix. It's better than repainting or doing whatever. But I kind of liked having a little bit of a textured background.
Yes. And coming from the professional TV world, I feel like my camera shots should look absolutely perfect. And so you always want separation between you and the background.
Right.
You want light on the background. You want something in between you and the background that should be lit to show the separation. And I always try to help people as a consultant, to help people with their virtual experience so they look the best that they can possibly look. I have two lights cross shooting. This light is shooting this way and that light is shooting that way. I have a light above me that separates me from the background, and two lights on the floor that are shooting up to provide a little, little color.
Right. And it looks fabulous, and it really looks good compared to me. And I'll tell I struggle with the lighting, and I especially struggle with lighting because of my glasses. And I have two big monitors, so that doesn't help matters. And then, and ring lights were worse. And so I'd have these little rings on my glasses. So, I have
put them higher up and
down. Okay.
Yep.
I they're on tripods, so I can easily do that. And one of the tricks that I discovered was, like I said, I've got these two big monitors. And so once I start a program, I turn my system to the night light display.
Right.
And so for those who are watching this, I'm going to turn my night light off. Now that's a scary thing because it's very bright. And it washes me out. Now I have a very pale complexion anyway, but it's just horrible. And so then when I turn the night light on, which every computer has, and you can manually turn it on, it gives a much warmer glow to it. And I can tinker with that too. And sometimes I do tinker with that depending on my guest, are they a little brighter? Are they, things like that. But just that simple little trick made a huge difference. And I don't look quite so scary.
And if you can have your camera as far back as possible, maybe there's 8 feet away from my camera.
Oh, wow.
And right underneath the camera lens, I have my computer. So it looks like
you're looking right at it.
I'm looking right at you, because I have it on a stand, and it's literally the screen is right underneath the lens.
Right. Well, and mine is on a plexiglass stand that is over my computer monitor. So again, I'm looking. You are right behind where my camera lens is.
Right.
And we've all seen where people are, gazing off, all of these various things, or, and so it's, tricks that are pretty simple to do that just raise the level of how we look. Because this is not something that's going away. We all know that now. We are sticking with this. And then you mentioned, there are the audio. We can actually forgive bad video, but we can't forgive bad audio. And so, and people panic, and I tell them, this is not an expensive thing. We're not talking $1,000 mics unless you are at, there are certainly people who are at that level. I have a Blue Yeti microphone. I have it on a boom arm. I'll move it here into the screen for a minute. And I did that because it came with a stand, very cool, pretty little stand. And yours is on a boom also. But when it was on my desk, I talk with my hands and I knocked that dang thing over. Yeah. And so, it's just a simple thing, and folks, you can get all this stuff on Amazon. And you and I both have an earpiece. I love that. Yep. I call it my CIA earpiece. And part of it is I can't wear a headset because it would mess up my hair. But I like the earpiece better because
I do have that expensive microphone, but
you should.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And one thing we always tell the people that are in our productions is no AirPods,
Mhm.
because the microphone from those is horrible.
Right. Mhm.
It can become, for whatever
Mhm.
reason, unpaired in the
Mhm.
middle of a production,
Mhm.
or you can show up without it being charged. We've
Mhm.
had people try
Right.
to do that.
Or
So,
heaven forbid they fall out. you
yeah,
know? um, and yeah, I mean, just again, simple little things that kind of raise that level. And I discovered I need to have the earpiece or headphones
right.
rather than using my speakers because I
Yeah,
get feedback.
you get feedback. You
Yeah.
have to have headphones.
Yeah.
And one thing, I always tell people to how to step up their virtual
Mhm.
production is not show up at the last second.
Mhm.
For our interview today,
Right.
we call in a TV
Mhm.
world faxing. I
Mhm.
came to my studio. I
Mhm.
turned everything on
Mhm.
15, 20 minutes
Yep.
before. I made sure my video worked, my
Mhm.
audio was, everything
Mhm.
was in working order,
Mhm.
all the lights were on.
Mhm.
So when it came time for us to meet, I literally just had to sit
Mhm.
down and click the link.
Right. Right. And I tell people, you might need to restart your computer and reset your modem. Just kind of get everything back to where it's nice and fresh. You
Right,
mentioned how many other people are on it. Do you
right.
have three kids at home watching TV and and all of these various things? If you're doing this a lot for business, get a dedicated modem. Your business
Yeah.
can pay for that. You don't need to worry about your kids gaming and just get a dedicated modem. It's not that expensive. But folks, do not pair it with your phone.
Right.
I've and we've had to, I mean, clearly there are times where there are exceptions. And especially if you're doing like a live broadcast during an emergency or something, you might have to pair it with your phone, but your phone is, it's good enough for you to do work, but it's not good enough for you to do an
Right.
extended broadcast.
No, no.
And so what are some other tips that you have for people who are, they need to be professional. We're not meeting as much in person, or more importantly, we have expanded our networks. We've now figured out, oh my gosh, I can be networking depending on what we do with people around the world. So what are some more tips for businesses that you have?
Yeah, when a business has a live event, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure you do a little research and hire a
Mm-hmm.
company that has background in
Mm-hmm.
producing events.
Right.
A company like ours, we've done a lot of events all over the country, and I will say no if my people are not available to work that
Okay.
event,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't want to show up with crew that I'm not comfortable
Mm-hmm.
with to produce an event,
Right.
take a chance on it,
Mm-hmm.
on having an issue.
Mm-hmm.
So before I even send the estimate to a client,
Mm-hmm.
I'll call the three key people that I
Mm-hmm.
work with and say, "Are you available on
Mm-hmm.
June 2nd and 3rd
Mm-hmm.
to go to Miami?" And if they say no, then I'll pass.
Right. Yeah.
Because my philosophy and my business mantra is I surround myself with people that are smarter than I am. If
Mm-hmm.
I'm the smartest person in the room, then we have a problem.
Wrong room.
So
Mm-hmm.
I always like to have the right people
Mm-hmm.
in the key positions with me at all times,
Mm-hmm.
so we have a successful production.
Mm-hmm. Right. And there are definitely times where we should hire it done. Obviously, it depends on how important it is. I'm not going to hire this done because it's just a podcast and I do it
Right.
several times a week. But if, say, I were giving a shareholder report to my, that's something different. But we've always had to know that, right? Long ago, I worked for a company that was publicly traded, and this was long enough ago that we still had those nasty overhead projectors with the plastic film thingies, right? I know. But I always had a second bulb. Sometimes I had a second projector. I would have a second set of the transparencies. I mean, all of these various things. But more importantly, whoever was giving the presentation could do it without those. How
Right.
many times have we seen somebody that's, whether they're a public speaker, whatever, and if they don't have their accompanying things, they're just stuck. And so if you all of a sudden, maybe you don't have video and you can only do audio. Okay. Can you tell the story with your voice without having the pictures? I mean, all of those various things.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example. We like to rehearse, and we like to sloppy rehearse. And what I mean by that is we try to create every mistake possible in the rehearsal. And we always tell the client, don't get freaked out.
Right. We're going to do this on purpose.
We're doing this on purpose. We're making these mistakes because we want to know what could possibly go wrong tomorrow or whenever the production is. So we try to make every mistake possible, hit every button wrong and right. We just want to know and be prepared and have backup plans for everything. And when the client says, no, we don't want to rehearse, then we say, the onus is on you.
It's for our benefit too.
It's our, it's and this is the perfect example, and I give it every time. We did a live stream with Greg Norman, the golfer, when they announced the new Live Golf League. And no one wanted to rehearse. He didn't want to rehearse. And there was a lot of slides, PowerPoint slides. And we begged him, and we gave Mr. Norman a clicker, and it was to let us know when to advance the slides. And we wanted to go over it with him. So we were all on the same page, and they absolutely wouldn't do it. What did he do? Kept his finger on kept going like this.
Oh no, he was nervous, so
we kept going through the slides, right? Because
he doesn't see them.
We explained it to him 3 times, and he kept clicking it and clicking it, and he was not meaning to click it.
It was that nervous twitch thing.
It screwed up the whole production.
Oh yeah,
but we begged them to rehearse, and they just wouldn't rehearse.
Right. And I had to, do one time with a CEO where he was giving it was an insurance company that I worked for, and he was giving a presentation at what was known as the $1 Million Roundtable. So these were insurance agents who by themselves sold more than $1 million every year. I mean, this is a really big deal. And so he was, but the tricky part was this is a worldwide thing. And so it was to be simulcast in other languages. And so he had to, in essence, memorize his presentation. And that was not going to happen. He just, and he knew that. I mean, I loved working with this man because he definitely knew his limitations. And so we got a teleprompter. But again, we had to work with that teleprompter so that it went at the right pace. And, it would say pause. I mean, because he had conceivably said something funny or dramatic or, but again, we practiced. Oh my gosh, did we practice with this? And it went very well. But they had told him, they said he could not deviate one word because then it wouldn't match what the translators were saying.
Right.
Somebody else, might have had the ego that would have said, no, I know exactly what I'm going to say and I don't need to practice. And then the poor teleprompter, and we see that all the time, right? I love the live captioning. It's like they said something they weren't expecting.
Right.
So that's always fun. But if it's important, folks, practice it. We're seeing a lot of video blogs and things. And yes, it does make it more human to see the errors and some things like that. But you still need to make sure that you're getting your message across in a way that you want it to get across and not, oh my God, they just screwed up type of thing.
Yeah. I mean, coming from the professional broadcast background, we rehearse everything. Everything.
Right.
And even when we make a mistake, you at home may not know that we've made a mistake, but we know.
Right.
And we never want a mistake on air. And we never want to see the camera whip, left or right. So we take great pride in not making mistakes on the air. And if they are made, we take pride in you not knowing that there are mistakes.
Right. Yeah. And that I think is probably the most important thing is nobody knows that there was an error. And sometimes obviously they will, but there are, that there are lots and lots of times with any type of live broadcast where things didn't go quite the way you had planned. But it's, it's the matter of, oops, wrong camera turned on or whatever.
Right.
So, well, Howie, of course, I would be remiss, especially being the sports fan that I am, if I didn't say, what are some of your highlights? That obviously the Beijing Olympics would have just been phenomenal, but what are some of the other things that when you look back, you think, I can't believe I was part of that?
Yeah, I've shot over 20 Kentucky Derbies, um, and Preaknesses and
Mm-hmm,
Belmont Stakes.
mm-hmm,
A lot of Olympics
mm-hmm,
from, I was the camera operator that pulled Michael Phelps out of the water in Greece when he
mm-hmm,
won his first gold medal,
mm-hmm.
when no one
No
barely
one
knew
knew
who
who
he
he
was.
was. Mm-hmm,
Um, uh, to Italy,
mm-hmm,
to London Olympics when
mm-hmm,
the U.S. women won there,
mm-hmm,
and just a lot. I did about 20 WrestleManias, which
mm-hmm,
is WWE's
mm-hmm,
largest global event.
mm-hmm,
So I've had the great fortune to travel the world and do
mm-hmm,
some awesome, productions.
mm-hmm. I love it. And it is something that is obviously very glamorous, but obviously lots and lots of hard work. The preparation before shooting it, and then everything that you do afterwards. And so as cool as we think, ooh, that sounds, that's a lot of work to be doing.
A lot of travel.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely takes a lot out of you. I have
I bet
a
it was
lot
kind of
of
nice during COVID to not be doing as much.
Yeah, and I started to slow down and concentrate on my businesses
Mm-hmm.
before COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and I really, I hired a business coach, and I had a mindset change that I was no longer a camera operator with a business on the side, that I was
Mm-hmm.
now an entrepreneur.
Oh,
And
I love that.
I learned how to spell it,
Mm-hmm.
and I was an entrepreneur that was also a camera operator,
Mm-hmm.
but an entrepreneur first.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I do now.
Mm-hmm.
I only get on a plane now for pleasure,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm still in the television
Mm-hmm.
and television sports space, but
Mm-hmm.
just doing something a little bit different,
Right.
and it's great.
So when you go to something for fun or watch something on TV, is your mind still being critical and thinking, I would have done that from a different angle, or, oh my gosh, are
Sometimes,
they getting that? Mm-hmm.
absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. And there are a few events that I do miss doing,
Mm-hmm.
because from traveling a lot, I have friends that are all over the
Mm-hmm.
country, and some international as
Mm-hmm.
well. And so getting to see them is a little
Mm-hmm.
bit difficult. I always said, like, the Super Bowl and the Kentucky Derby is
Mm-hmm.
like a TV family reunion,
Right. Mm-hmm.
so that's stuff I miss a lot
Mm-hmm.
of the people.
Right. Well, and we see that, when they talk about, hey, this person has been with us for 20 years. And I love it when the announcers will do that, and they'll focus on somebody, or,
Yeah,
and it's always very entertaining when they want to focus on the camera person, because they're like, no, no.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And of course they have to send another camera person to do it. But I always love when they do that, because they understand, or somebody understands, just how important those people are. And of course it is very much a team. You can't
Hmm.
have, it is, but yeah, when they all recognize, hey, we have to all support each other.
Right.
Well, oh my gosh, Howie, we have just about 5 minutes left. And so tell us a little bit more about what you do, and specifically about the broadcast sports course, because I think we might have some folks who are interested in that. But tell us more about how people find you and what are the services that you provide.
Yeah, our website, howiezales.com, I will take you to our family of websites,
Mm-hmm,
and Viridity Entertainment, or VES.
mm-hmm,
We're a live stream and event business where we produce, corporate meetings of
mm-hmm,
and events. The best example of that is, let's say there's a small audience in person, but a
mm-hmm,
global audience
mm-hmm,
virtually. We'll produce the event for the people in person,
mm-hmm,
and in the virtual space,
Mhm.
and we'll send any PowerPoints to the slides in person, and then we'll make the virtual experience super interesting and broadcast quality with a combination of the person speaking, then the slides, then like a two box with a little box with the person speaking and a big box with the slide,
Mhm.
or just the slide. And we'll keep changing the
Mhm.
camera shots, making it interesting, and making a broadcast quality production
Mhm.
for a meeting that people, obviously can't attend because they're in other parts of
Mhm.
the world.
Right. I love it. Well, tell us more about the broadcast sports course.
The broadcast sports course was designed because the age of freelancers was getting up there, and um, you know, I wanted to kind of pay it forward because I was taught the business, and I wanted to help do that
Mhm.
for other people. And we did the course once, and we hope to. COVID really kind of put a damper on it, but we hope to do it again soon.
Mhm.
And but we had a new number of people take it, and we trained people from what to do from the second they parked their car on site to the
Mhm.
second they got back in their car at the end of the night, when they showed up to
Mhm.
work. We gave them templates on how to email the clients.
Mhm.
We gave them a script of what to say to
Mhm.
clients on the phone to help sell themselves.
Mhm.
um, I wrote in collaboration with some other people, I wrote a book or a manual on what to do when you get on the job, from a camera person's perspective, how to shoot baseball, basketball, soccer, hockey, and boxing, the
Mhm.
major sports, from every camera position in a general fashion. And we did it in a digital form, so someone could always, have it on their phone to
Mhm.
reference back to.
Right. Well, now what did
Um,
they tell me? Mhm.
um, and we're always available for, ongoing coaching.
Mhm.
And the best part about it is, since we have a business where we hire freelancers, I've hired 4 out of the 5 people that took the
Oh,
course.
I love it. Mhm.
And the only reason I didn't hire the 5th person is because they got a full-time job in the television production space.
Ah, so even better for them at least.
Yep. Yes.
Right, right. Well, Howie, this really has been fascinating. Like I said, I like knowing the background and all of those various things, and so it's so much fun. But it's also been great for people to understand, when they're the in front of the camera person, what is going to make it more professional for them.
Right.
And because yeah, it is kind of funny when we have some things happen, but we need to always be professional, and to make that happen. So do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
I appreciate everyone's time. I appreciate your time, and please reach out to us if you have any events that you're planning. We'd be happy to talk to you about helping you produce them to have them look, as professional as possible.
Perfect. Well, I've been having so much fun talking with Howie Zales. I can't wait. We're going to have to do it again just because it was so much fun. But until then, I'm
Definitely.
Deb Creer, and everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.